it, so you replenish your energy.
So it's more like a cycle.
Yeah, like you just kind of like you open up and you're like just simply a vessel, like how the Bible describes a human being to be a vessel for God. You know what I mean? To bear witness and this and that. But you just open yourself up, and that the Reiki flows, and like I can feel it, and it causes different sensations. A lot of times people experience euphoria. Like they get high, and you could be like, oh, well, that's just because, they're laying there, they're calm. Okay, well, how come it's not as common in massage therapy to get that effect? Similar. But I mean, you don't actually, as a practitioner, you don't actually have to touch the person. Your hands can be 3 to 6 inches away. And, all you got to do is intend for it to work. Like, that's the kind of the main point with it is intentional and directed. Okay, and so that kind of plays a huge part. And I talk about a built-in ethical code, which is where I kind of talk about how a person can disbelieve, but if they're open to it, it'll come. That's where that comes into play, because it's intentionally driven, so therefore it cannot go where it is not allowed.
Well, first thing is, I can understand the concept, but in the Christian sense, when it talks about the vessel, I know you're kind of saying that's the kind of concept, which is similar, but that's more of that God,
It's love, right?
Yeah,
well,
it's supposed to be some of that, but I can see what you're saying.
Well, it's Christ, and Christ is love, and Christ is blood, and that's what it's the same, just different terminology.
Well, I mean, you can get it in
because Jesus was actually a Reiki practitioner. He was, because when he was traveling, he learned in the south of France, because Reiki was around 20,000 years before, any main religions. It's been around for a long time. But Jesus was a Reiki master as well as he studied many of the other religions, and that's when he talks about with all the sages and all that, where he, in those lost years traveling, what do sages and all those people do? They're healers. And what he accomplished was mind over matter. Through his meditations, through his prayers, he was able to take quantum physics. I mean, he was a master of biomechanics and bioengineering and bioelectromagnetic, because that's how those miracles, to explain them physically and humanly, that's how they're going to have to work. That Jesus had to physically manipulate their bodies to change them. That's how, you know what I mean?
There is a gap between Jesus.
Yeah, there's 30.
So
yes. But that's also debatable. I mean, I don't know of any actual archaeological evidence.
Yeah, there is the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadis.
But the Dead Sea Scrolls were supposedly written thousands of years before Christ.
Those, but then you also have the Nag Hammadi, which is the Book of Jesus, or the Book of Jude.
Start off with what was going on.
I don't remember what we were talking about.
We were talking about like the validity of
like you were saying.
We were saying
like the Book of Judas and stuff like that from the Nag Hammadi scriptures, which were written at the same time that the other books of the Bible were.
Well, see, here's the thing: is that the book of Judas, I have a problem with, because according to the Bible, Judas went out and hung himself.
Could he not have written one before?
Well, I mean,
because you gotta remember, there was enough time frame there. There was months where the disciples were with Jesus, where they could have written books and
or they could have written down, yes. But here's the thing: is that all the texts that we do have, as far as like the Gospel of Luke, Matthew, Mark, John, those are written right after his death. In other words, they I don't believe.
But those are part of the New Testament, right?
Exactly.
What about the Old Testament?
The Old Testament was written thousands of years before the New Testament. It was written in a periodic time about the 1500.
So why can't you include any text in between? Why does it have to be way before Jesus' birth or right after his death?
The reason why the ones about Jesus that I what are you saying that with is because the ones that actually knew him and actually were there when he was alive, those are the ones that I would count as the most credible. So when I count the Old Testament books are the ones of the Jewish people.
So how do you know that? Like Matthew, Luke, and Mark were closer to Jesus.
Because
than
Matthew
Judas.
was one
I
of
think
his
him and
disciples.
Judas were awfully close because Jesus was very much like the prodigal son stuff, where he
Well,
kept his enemies closer. You know. So
Not
how
according
would
to
you
the
say
biblical
that?
context in a sense. But he said to love your enemies. And he did
Right.
went to the publicans and sinners, but as far as his enemies goes to speak, Judas really, he loved Judas as a human being, that's true. But Judas, he didn't make Judas do.
He made him. He was the secretary of their treasury. Like
Yeah, he
Judas
was-
did
yeah,
all their
he was the-
money.
he was the
So
money.
obviously Jesus had to trust
Yeah.
him, and he had to be.
But
one of the
Jesus
closer
knew what he
ones
was going to do.
Exactly.
So,
So that means he was closer to Judas in a sense than he was the other ones because he knew what he was going to do.
well, that's not necessarily true
Where he
because he
didn't know
called
what
John
God
the
wants him
beloved,
to do.
the beloved of God. It's not so much about closeness or anything to that degree because if you take that into account, Judas was the one who had to deal with money and everything like that. So that means he would be less likely to actually write it down. Second, all the books that we do have are written after Christ, like not in the span, after the 33 AD or whenever.
No,
he died.
because hold on, you've got the books, some of the books that are in the Bible. The rest of those books have been found in the Nag Hammadi scriptures, like more of, oh gosh, you got Thomas. I know Thomas for sure.
What about Thomas?
There's more.
Thomas, but he hit one of
Catholic Bible.
the. I have to.
You got, there's a bunch.
But
I have
they have the
one.
Apocrypha also in there, part of the Apocrypha, which is the books that at the Council of Nicaea they said these are not coherent with the
So,
scriptures of God.
Gino, do
That's
you
what they said.
think, I mean, do you agree with Josh? Do you find only the text thousands of years before Jesus or the text from what he considers closest apostles to Jesus after his death,
Well,
those books to be more credible and therefore going, that we should take what they say over texts that were, actually found in original condition and written at the same time as those books were?
What do you mean? Oh, now
Well, I believe in what you said because it's like about the healing energy, all of that. It's like I believe in it because it's like just mind over matter. You know what I mean? For example, well,
You cracked me up, Gina. You threw me off there. Okay. I'm with you now.
Making sense, go ahead.
Yeah.
does it make sense?
Yeah.
Well, about the mind over matter, about the healing thing, it's just, for example, if you go out outside on that cold weather, you can just go outside without your jacket on. If you think that you're not cold, it will work. Like,
Do you think it's more divinely influenced, or do you think it's completely up to the individual's free will to create that mind over matter?
I'm not really sure. It's just,
Do you think God gives you that ability of mind over matter, or do you think you just simply do it in a human physical form, where it's your
I
free
believe-
will that does mind over matter?
I believe it's my free will. I mean, it's like it's my mind. I think of it.
Yeah, it's the mind.
It's physical.
Still comes with God.
I don't think wishing for something to happen makes it happen.
I don't think wishing does either, because with wishing, you can be intending, but for the most part, it's like how within healing traditions, they talk about if you worry, however much you worry, you need to pray twice as much, because as much as you worry, you're canceling out that much prayer.
Well, would you consider intention on asking for something or willing something?
Both.
Well,
It's kind of, I guess maybe kind of the best way to do it is like an electric current. As long as all the currents are hooked up and there's no blockages or interferences, that current's going to go.
okay, do you believe there are limits then to this healing? Do you believe it's limitless, or does it have?
I believe Jesus put it best when he said that man can do more than I can. And he brought people back from the dead. So I believe that since he has been away from earth, I really feel like, humans have lost so much touch with the supernatural realm, because I feel like more so than the heavens, one of the realms we forget about in our spiritual activities is earth and how we treat earth. Because, we've got all these religions